Welcome to CMMS Radio, a podcast and general resource for all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, from selection to implementation to help you make better choices and have a successful CMMS journey. We'll bring in experts along the way to help us learn more about CMMS, facilities operations, and much more. If you need help with a CMMS project, send a message at cmmsradio.com using the What's on Your Mind link. Suggest a topic, share your CMMS story, or ask questions. All right, thank you for tuning in, everyone. Today we have a very special guest and an expert project manager. Her name is Ann Campea. She is the everyday PM. She has multiple degrees, nearly 15 years in project management, and a whole lot more. She is known for her Zen approach to projects, problem solving, and influence. I met her a couple years ago, and she is here on CMMS Radio today to help with a common thing that I see in the world of CMMS over the last 20 years in my career. And welcome to CMMS Radio.
I am just so excited to be here, Greg. I think you just mentioned it's been a long time coming, so I'm glad that we were able to get together.
Me too. And I know you're super busy, and that doesn't even get to the heart of the matter. Guys and gals out there, Ann is running and gunning constantly. She's working on so much stuff. Not for me to tell you. You'll find out about a lot of that stuff over the next several months. But here's the scenario, Ann. So you and I once did a really awesome coffee chat. So here's the scenario in keeping with the OG coffee chat theme. You're walking down the hall at the office, and someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, Ann, good luck with that CMMS rollout." And you're like, "What?" And they just bought a system, and they noticed before you even knew it that you're the project manager that has to deal with that. Does that kind of thing really happen in the world of project management?
That's a great question. And by the way, before I get into what I would respond with, Greg, you've been an absolute pleasure to work with. If you haven't checked out the episode of the Everyday PM with Greg on it, that's actually one of the more popular episodes, was those coffee chats, because of just your natural ability to just have real conversations around use cases like the one you just presented me with. So is it a real scenario? To answer your question, yes, that does happen. And it typically, it would probably happen more often if I was not in a remote setting anymore. But I envision that project managers that still have to go into an office where you naturally will walk by somebody, whether it's an executive or somebody that is able to kind of green light those projects, is going to be walking down the same hallway. And of course, that's the best opportunity to kind of drop some bombs on the project managers when you're kind of just walking by them in passing. So yes, it is absolutely a scenario that we've had to deal with.
And I like the way you put that, like dropping bombs on somebody. So in the world of CMMS, so CMMS, just for you, is computerized maintenance management software. So you think in terms of facilities management, plant management, manufacturing facilities, schools, universities, and people are utilizing these solutions to create, track, and manage work orders, like work requests. Oh, there's a light bulb out, or there's a machine down. And they do asset management, which is equipment, and all these different things. And the reason I came up with this scenario was, in my world, we'd work with all the various stakeholders, right, to kind of qualify a project for them based on what the client needs. And then we get them on board, right? Forget about selling software, but now the software has been purchased, and now somebody's going to have the pleasure of deploying that. Now, if it's the right stakeholders, it's an absolute pleasure for them. But sometimes what happens is they do all their work, and then it gets shifted to the PMO that might not have been involved or part of the initial stakeholder group that was going to have visibility to this project. So this is why I wanted to present it in this way, so it was kind of like out of the blue. What would be the first thing you need to know if you are blind to what the project was and is? Like, who do you get a hold of first? Who are the people you need to talk to about it as soon as possible, so that you can, hey, I don't know anything about this project, but I'm going to find out so that I can just knock it out of the park? What would you do?
Ooh, these are good questions, Greg. So this is where it's a little bit challenging now, because I've now stepped into an operational role. So it's a hybrid operations and project management. And while I like to say there's synergy between wearing those hats, There's also the first question that comes to mind from an operational standpoint is, was this the right platform for us to engage with as part of our organizational strategy?
Hmm.
Right? And so that side of my brain is saying, I'd like that question answered. Have we run an ROI analysis on this platform? Was it the right choice? What was the use or the justification for bringing this on? So the operation side needs that sort of information to come in. Now, from a project management side, I would need to get together with the people closest to the project. What I've found in my experience is that everyone carries a little bit of information and everybody has a different perspective about the project. So it's, if you asked Anne when she was just starting her project management career what she would have done, I think that version of myself would have said, I'll go straight to the project sponsor and they're going to give me everything I need. They're going to know from a high level, what is this project? They're going to have all the requirements all buttoned up for me and handed to me in a little playbook. And it's just going to be like that. But that's not it, right? So when you start to uncover the layers of the onion, your sponsor is going to likely have parts of the justification that went along with bringing the platform in.
Hmm.
But then it's the people who are actually doing the implementation from even just from a development standpoint, to make sure there's integration and things are kind of connected and the data's in the system or whatever that needs to happen. Those are the folks that are going to know where are we actually at realistically from a timeline perspective, from a budget perspective, from a resourcing perspective. Those are the people that will give you kind of the real story about it. And I'm not trying to discount the project sponsor. They're going to know enough. But oftentimes there's levels of detail that are missing. And I think that's where you got to go to the project team that's working on it. And I will caution project managers by saying this. Even the project team is going to have a very unique perspective on that platform, meaning they probably are in the discovery, design, maybe even development phases of a project.
Hmm.
They're not necessarily in the rollout execution, like the implementation portion. And to this scenario that you've given me, this is a real scenario where it does often then go to a PMO to say, hey, we've built the damn thing, figure out how to make sure people are using it,
Ah.
right? And so that's where the challenge is like, if I as a PM get handed that in that scenario, I number one would go to the people closest to the project. So again, maybe the project sponsor, but more likely the developers, the people
Hmm.
that are in there. And then I would go after the subject matter experts. I would look through the documentation that's existing to see what were the actual requirements. I would ask a few questions. We're curious people. I would ask, do you think this is actually done? What's your definition of done
Hmm.
in terms of your handoff to PMO? And what do you think needs to happen at this point? Have you pilot tested it? Have you queried your pilot group about feedback, that sort of thing? Like, where are we? And so those are naturally the questions that I think would come up first.
Hmm.
And then from there, I'm sure a laundry list of things will come out of it.
So, with everything that you said, what's interesting to me is people that aren't project managers are part of the PMO, but part of the team, the initiating team, say, for example, a combination of leadership and then boots on the ground. And I'm only differentiating as it relates to their role within the organization.
Mm-hmm.
So, regardless of what folks are working on out there as to the type of CMMS they're rolling out, what's really similar about everything that you said is even absent a project manager per se, the exact same thing tends to happen. And this is one of the things when I'm having different experts on CMMS radio, we want to kind of showcase in a way what these pitfalls are so that people, one, know that they're not alone and that this is a thing, but two, that there's ways to think about it and approach it that can kind of rescue that faulty, rocky start. And I
Mm-hmm.
think what you said about connecting with the right people, the project champion, for example, is going to have some information that's incredibly valuable. And then through that, kind of your own internal discovery process there, you can figure out where are the clues, who else I need to get to. And then for me and a lot of the people that I work with, we're always wanting to know where are those stakeholders that were typically forgotten. So this is something else. We talked about this a long, long time ago.
Mhm.
And I think it was when we look at people and process being the most important things and then connecting those to the organization, it's very often that the organization overall can overlook those people that are actually going to utilize the platform.
Mhm.
And you need a strategy for that, because it doesn't matter if you pick the right solution. So let's make a bunch of assumptions. It was the right solution, properly vetted, all these things, but still right there, that is not enough, because the real work happens when it gets into your hands or the team that you're supporting to deploy it. And we need user adoption. Otherwise,
Mhm.
everything is just completely out the window. Is that kind of a fair statement with projects in general, even if it's not
Oh
for
yeah.
CMMS?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I think we immediately, our inclination when we get that water cooler hallway bomb dropped on you is, all right, let's go, right? So immediately your mind starts to think about, okay, let's build the dang thing. This is a great idea. Little to no questions are asked during that point, because for whatever reason there's some urgency,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's always
Mm-hmm.
some sort of urgency. I and I always, it makes me laugh every time I think about it, because I will share one tidbit before I get into the response to your inquiry here. Is I encourage project managers and even other stakeholders to ask what's driving the urgency. I can't tell you how many times I've asked that in just this last year, and have gotten very mixed or no response to that question.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but kind of going back to the scenario here, I think that part of it is people just kind of want to build, 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 and then somewhere down the line, when they're close to being done with whatever it is their platform they're building, then they start to think about, oh, what's the user experience?
Mm-hmm.
It seems a little backwards to me. Oh, by the way, let's have some people actually try it now. Now that we built it,
Yeah.
because I think part of that is driven by, as we've been talking, each person on the project team plays a particular role. So always they're going to wear the hat of that role and have that perspective. And so, by no fault to them, if you're the developer, your definition of done for this project is you built the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done, right? And oftentimes, missing from the plan or missing from conversations is stakeholders, your end users, requirements around implementation and rollout,
Mm-hmm.
looking at things that maybe needed to be in order from a process or operational perspective to support the platform that were broken to begin with. So the
Mm-hmm.
platform's not going to fix that piece, right? If anything, it further exposes some other gaps that may exist at your organization. And then all the while, it's like, okay, we're done. We built it. Your leadership team is thinking, okay, well, why isn't anyone using it? Well, it's because we failed to put the customer first, put the end user first. And so I
Right.
think a lot of the maturity in the way we perceive projects now, it should be thinking about the person who actually has to consume whatever that is.
That's I love this. So now I'm going to go back to how you now kind of sit on have had the experience of sitting on both sides of the house. I'm just going to simplify it to both sides of the house, if you will. And in that, operationally speaking, when it comes to organizational operation versus specific department operation, right? Does that does that gap always seem to be, in other words, I think what I'm getting at is it fair to say to everyone out there, those gaps are going to be there and it's something you always have to keep an eye on. It just comes with the territory, kind of like problems are going to happen. You just need to be in a position to solve them.
Yeah, I would argue that's the case, because we're continuing to optimize ourselves, whether it is bringing in a CMMS, or
Mhm.
it's looking at a process or workflow, or it's
Mhm.
the gap in failing to bring in your end users as part of your project plan. I think organizations are always looking to optimize how they run their business. And so naturally, from an operational standpoint, you're always going to find, unless in a perfect scenario, you've fixed everything. And I tell this to everybody I work with as well. So this is no secret. If I go to work one day and find there are no gaps in the organization, then I retire. I'm done, right? Because
Yeah.
I have achieved something that is rarely achieved at an organization, which is optimize, like the ultimate point of optimization. And there's only a few use cases where I've heard that happen and historically documented. Take Toyota, for example, is like one of those key pillars of an organization that figured out how to optimize the way they work.
Mhm.
But that to me is kind of like a wow, that would be the ultimate achievement if I could ever see or say that I achieved that in my own career. So again, a long-winded way of saying those are always going to exist. So when it comes to bringing on a CMMS, you have to understand of those gaps or challenges that the organization has from an operational perspective. Is there enough foundation to still support bringing something in like that? And you have to consider things like, do we have enough resources? As a very good example, often we purchase tools or something like a CMMS and haven't properly resourced for it, and maybe under forecasts the amount of people that we would need to have in implementation.
Mhm.
And that tends to be where the project management side of it falls short, is that in that failure to figure out what is actually needed to support it.
And there is a lot in everything that you said, and I prefer long-winded. I like to
Okay.
talk a lot because I like to explain things in several different ways, and I often hope that it doesn't put people to sleep. But the point here with all this is when we're working our project plans, and it is around a CMMS. In this case, we're talking about a CMMS, including those frontline workers,
Hmm.
the workforce that's actually going to utilize the platform to create the inputs that we want in order to achieve the outputs that we're really after. And I agree with you that that pinnacle of an organization getting into a position of constant process improvement, like being fully optimized, I
Hmm.
also think that that kind of unicorn, when you catch it, it's temporary,
Unicorn. That's
because
great.
there's always going to be disruptions. But when we include everybody in the plan early, we now have some answers at this point where it gets dropped on you like a bomb, and you now have some additional resources to further build your own confidence to deliver this project because you've gotten input from the actual users and you know that's there. It just adds a layer of confidence to that we're on the right path because we've already got the buy-in at
Hmm.
that level. We've got it at this level, and then it gets tied together. So I'm going to ask you another question, switch
Yeah.
it up a little bit. When it comes to organizations as a whole, in what you've experienced over these years with the different types of projects, PMO, and now being heavily involved in operations, is it fair to say that the different parts of the business absolutely speak different languages that just seem similar, but they're quite different?
Ooh. Operations and PMO.
As well as just generalized departments, like think of
Mm,
maintenance or maintenance and reliability, whether you know what that is or not. Let's just pretend these are
yeah,
the people out there making things happen that you don't often interact with.
it's a great question. Again, Greg, I think that we all speak the same language. We fail to listen to understand, I think, is much more of what my perspective on that, which means that you can have all the stakeholders carrying their various perspectives in a room, which is fine. That's what you want, right? You want the variety, you want the diversity in thought in the room to drive the best decisions. But when it comes to listening to actually understand and interpret what somebody's saying, sometimes that's where we just naturally fail as human beings because either we're already thinking about what we want to say to contribute, or we're already 10 steps into our thought process around where is this meeting going or conversation going. Or the challenge can be, especially from a project management aspect, is that everybody's going to want to drive their own agenda, and that's not with any negative intention. You're doing your job, right? You're doing the role that you were hired on to do, which is represent whatever business area you are representing as part of the organization. And so if my procurement person goes into a meeting and they are heavily saying, no, 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 the CMMS is too expensive, we don't have the budget, or whatever, right? Whatever their challenge might be, they're speaking with the procurement hat on. But then if we go to, our, I don't know,
Facilities
CTO,
manager. Yeah.
or who are you thinking?
Facilities manager.
Yeah, your facilities manager, they either have a very strong perspective on the same topic, or maybe the facilities manager is kind of just there listening to understand and can give a very uh, fresh and probably much more neutral perspective on the topic that's being discussed.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think inherently there is some bias because we all play a specific role for the organization. But if we all kind of come back to this idea that we all work for the same place, we're all trying to achieve the same overarching strategy, if we continue to remind ourselves of that part of it, then it's a little bit easier for us to wrangle all of those varied thoughts into kind of a coherent conversation, and hopefully you can get to ultimately what would be a very sound decision for your company.
And so now I want to take all of that and I want to tap in a little bit to your Zen approach to a lot of these things. And it seems to me that what really is important to all of this, being able to move forward as organizations, CMMS or otherwise, is the why, connecting to the why at the person level first, organization level second, or is it kind of really tough, too much chicken and the egg type deal?
I always think the why is important. If you can't answer the why, then you've got some things to work through before you can even get to the organizational piece of it and how that attaches to strategy or whatnot.
Otherwise, we're all sitting around going,
yeah. It's the same thing about if you ask somebody what's driving the urgency and they can't answer it. Yeah. I now getting to wear both hats. I know the value of being able to have that time to ask these types of questions and get to the why.
Yeah.
Because the stronger the case of the why is, I think the easier for you, whether you're an operations person or a project manager whose task is to carry through with the project, it makes those conversations you have to have around the project a lot easier if you can really understand the why.
Interesting, everything you're saying now, because I'm always kind of thinking, and I don't want to just wait for my turn to talk. I want to kind of take in what you're saying, and it's reminding me of some things. Somebody I've had on my podcast, I don't know that you would know him. His name is JD Solomon, and he talks a lot about this concept of communicating with finesse. And this just is constantly reminding me of that, where communication connected to the why, we can all start to achieve something. But I think, and I'm not saying right or wrong, I think organizations struggle with that aspect of what they do because they're focused on top line, bottom line revenues. The things in between kind of get forgotten, maybe not on purpose, or maybe they've lost the intention around that kind of a connection with the people top to bottom, left to right. It just makes me think, this is why we're always talking about this in all different industries and what we do when it comes to work and life and all that. And I don't know that we're going to solve this. I think we just need to talk about it so people are thinking about it. And that's what I appreciated about being able to talk to you about it, because I know, I could throw a curveball, and if you don't hit it out of the park, you're going to knock it out of the way, at least, just based on what I know. So I want to switch this up and move to the fun question segment, because we're going to do this again later. This is just the first time that you're on CMMS Radio, but I want to switch to fun questions. Number one, what is your favorite music?
Oh, wow. You ask these kind of questions on your podcast. I want to do that. All right. Favorite genre of music?
Your call.
Ooh. Dang it. Okay. So I need a timer. Let's say R&B.
Sure. We can go R&B. That works.
All right. Let's just go with that.
All right. R&B, at least for now. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Could change next week.
On a Wednesday, it'll probably be a different. Is today Wednesday? No, it's Thursday. Yeah. So ask me on another day. It'll be a different genre.
Cool. Well, I'll take you up on that. Next one. Now, this one, it's, what is your favorite sport or hobby? And when it comes to sport, it does not have to be one that you necessarily play. It could be one that you like to watch and support and just gets you excited. Now, I personally know some of the potential answers, but I just want to hear what you say.
It's definitely basketball. I love to play it. I consider myself a decent shooter. Um, I can't dribble that well, but I love to watch it as well. I just grew up such a fan with, my dad being one of my closest friends and as well as, sports buddies. He kind of
Mhm.
got me into it. So yeah, I would say basketball. Go
Yeah.
Lakers.
Yeah. And we know everybody else, you can just figure that out. We won't actually say it, but there's a cultural connection as it relates to basketball, and it's critically important. I'll
Oh,
say that.
see,
Yeah.
I didn't,
Yeah, we
I
know.
didn't know that.
We'll talk about that. But
Okay.
culturally speaking, that is one of the top. That's usually top on the list as far as
That would
favorite
make a
sports.
lot of sense. I
Yeah.
think there are probably a, so many basketball courts in the Philippines versus the ratio of people that live there. So yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible, and it's like no joke, like so serious. I've got a little nephew that's like going to school because he plays basketball so well.
Oh,
It's amazing. So
that's
I
amazing.
love that you said basketball.
You knew it.
Um, yeah, it's cool stuff. Now this one, the next and final of the fun questions.
Okay.
There's no right or wrong answers. So I'd like to know your perspective and philosophy and opinion on work life balance.
Yes. I would say my opinion is you definitely need a balance. I have been in that camp, and I'm sure you have as well, Greg, where you just feel so tied to your work that mentally, emotionally, even physically, it starts to show. And for myself, and not to make this a therapy session, but I know that when I am able to strike that balance, I feel healthier just overall, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And I think that's really important, especially in this environment now where I work 100% remotely. So it's not like I can have a break in my day where I leave the office.
Mhm.
So that's another kind of layer on top of this is if you work remotely, make sure you're taking your breaks. I, as the leader of the project management team, also promote mental health breaks, whether it's if you need a day where you have no meetings and you can just kind of focus, you still feel like working, but you just want to focus. Okay, let me know. I'll cover your meetings for you, whatever you need. But I do think it's really, really important for you. I think the antiquated way of looking at work and putting in your time, from my perspective, is dead. I don't think you necessarily have to work 23 hours a day to prove to me that you are a solid worker.
Mhm.
Just put in the time and the quality into the work that you're doing. But just know that, once you start to burn the candle at both ends, it's really going to be detrimental to other aspects of your life, I would say. So, my perspective is find the balance as you can, optimize the way you see work intentionally, do simple things like create checklists, prioritize your work, really understand time blocks, whatever you need to do to kind of get yourself organized, and then give yourself an end time at the end of the day.
Yeah.
5:30, you can't reach me unless the business is going to be gone tomorrow. If for whatever reason you can't reach me, then give yourself some of those constraints as well.
I like that, and the reason I always say there's no right or wrong answers is this is highly subjective, but in that regard, it's useful to others, even if we're only helping one person at a time, and it takes 5 months for that one person to hear this segment once the episode drops.
Sure.
That's important, and I love talking about it because I think every single one of us wrestles with it. I think every
Hmm.
single one of us has a unique kind of play on how we deal with that, and the rewards and the things that you can kind of reap from that, right? What the yield is from maintaining a work life balance. If you even believe in that, I get people that say, nope, don't believe in it. It's a harmony thing. Or,
Yeah.
nope, nope,
Yeah.
it's all the same thing. None of those are wrong. None of
Yeah.
those are wrong. And that's why I like the way you explained it and share, because that's yours.
Hmm.
And so that's going to resonate with somebody. So, well, first of all, I want to thank you for this long overdue episode on CMMS Radio. I've always wanted to have you on because I know the way you approach and attack projects, the way you work with people. I know your energy and all those types of things. And I thought it would be really fun to kind of try this. Hey, let's throw a curveball at Ann and
That's great.
see how she takes it. And it was great. Now, if people want to reach out to you, it would be my advice that they look around first and foremost for the Everyday PM, that stands for Project Manager, podcast, so they can check out some of those episodes. And you could also search by searching Ann Campea, that's ANN, and then her last name is CAMPEA, and you'll find her. She's online. You can see the YouTube channel, and then it's on all the different, like Spotify, Apple, wherever you consume your podcasts. Any other information people need in order to get in touch with you, Ann, or is that good?
Oh, that was fantastic. I couldn't have done it any more justice than you have, Greg. So thank you.
You got it. Well, this has been a blast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Greg.
Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit cmmsradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.